His eyes were like the devil spoke through him. Like an out-of-body experience. He would attempt to get me in like a trance-like state with entities on top of me, like a big bull. In this therapy, they call the entities critters, and they start communicating with the demons. I was trying to evangelize, and I was just like, he starts cussing and screaming and yelling and saying, F 'em, F 'em. And he just starts yelling like F. We are going to talk about the time that my therapist attempted witchcraft on me. Better yet, my psychologist, sit back, have a snack, get a drink, whatever you need, because today's video is going to be a little bit nuts. This is no hate to the people involved. This is more purely just educational, fun storytime video. I do want to preface this by saying that this is a pretty rare therapeutic experience. Not many people have had this kind of experience when going to therapy, so don't be afraid to go to therapy, guys. It started in July of 2023. I was ending my time in the clinic on campus at school. I was seeing patients for therapy about a couple times a week. Really, I was burnt out. I was re-experiencing a lot of trauma. I was going through a lot of things because I was seeing so many bad things happening. I had very complex cases. Fast forward to the end of my time in the clinic, I'm like, all right, it's time to get some help. So I started looking online for things and people. I even saw a sign by my house about some psychologist, and I was like, let me just look over there. So I did. I sent in an inquiry. I didn't get a response for it was like 6 months. At least it felt like 6 months, maybe 4 to 6 months. Finally get a response. They say we're having an opening in July, and I was like, I'll try it out. It's a psychologist, you know? So I go for a first time, and everything seems to be fine. This guy talks about parts. There's different parts of a person. It seems like he has a very interesting way of going about therapy. It was a lot different than things that I had been taught in my schooling. And I was like, well, maybe he just knows a lot of things that I don't know about. And I was like, well, that's cool. So we kind of talked about how every person has different parts and these parts take them over. There's no bad parts. And I kind of like that raised a red flag. And I was like, what does he mean? Like people aren't bad. So honestly, I didn't know it at the beginning of therapy, but as I've done more research on this kind of therapy, it does operate under the premise that people have inherently good in the center at their core, and they're actually good people. Everybody's good, which doesn't fall a lot in line with my faith, but I was thinking, okay, maybe he's saying that the adaptive qualities that you take on, like maybe from trauma, aren't inherently bad because they're trying to keep you safe and protect you, which is kind of true, but that's not exactly what he meant. I even had to get into a little bit of evangelism with him at a certain point in time. I didn't mean to, it's just in my nature. I saw him for a first time. It seemed okay, and then by the second session, things started getting kind of weird where I started to feel like an out-of-body experience, and I was just like, what's going on? Like, I just remember it was like I was seeing him from third person. It was so weird. My spirit started to jump a little bit, and I was like, what's going on, you know? And I didn't understand at the time, and I was like, well, maybe I'm just being resistant to getting better because, you know, that's how it is when you've had trauma. You know, you don't want to get better, or at least you're avoidant. You don't want to think about these things. So for a while I was just like, well, maybe I'm just resistant and there's something, but I couldn't put my finger on what was going on at the time. Because of my self-doubt, every single time I was like, well, maybe there's something going on with him, I'd be like, no, it's me. I don't want to get better. You know, he has my best interest in mind, because that's where my discernment falls, is the fact that I always think everybody has good intentions. Even if they do have good intentions, it doesn't mean they're good, because I love that quote that says the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So good intentions or not, it doesn't matter. This stuff can be evil. So as time went on, things started to come up in therapy where he would be basically saying I wasn't a good client because I would kind of question what we were doing and getting into. I think it's important to guard your heart and mind and figure out, okay, who am I lending my soul to right now at this time? So he would kind of be like, no, I just don't understand you. Something's trying to take control here. What part of you's coming out not letting me do my job? And I said, wait a second. And I went home crying that day because it was our third session. I had some part of me he didn't like that was getting in the way of therapy. And I was kind of getting worried, and I'm a people pleaser, and I wanted to do good. I wanted to be a good therapy patient. He was like, something's going on. And then the next session, I asked him what was going on, what he thought was happening, because I thought I was doing everything right, and he was like, oh, I'm sorry, I was being insecure. Okay, so we kept going, and some things happened. He would attempt to get me in a trance-like state. So in this kind of therapy, you kind of go into a trance, essentially, where you're supposed to maybe close your eyes and go into this deep inner state where he guides you through these different things, and then you figure out what part of you is coming out, I guess, and then you let that part manifest in you. At the time, I started doing research because I was like, okay, what is it exactly that he's trying to get me to do. And so he's essentially trying to bring up these different parts, and these different parts are supposed to come out. And you're supposed to allow them to speak to you. Throughout therapy, as you go through these trances, people have reported like spirit guides coming to them, different kinds of entities, which in this therapy, they call the entities critters. They started to realize that there is a such thing as bad parts. Instead, they call them critters. And they're also called unattached burdens. Basically, it's psychology language for demons. And they start communicating with the demons. And the demons show up as past selves, past relatives, spirit guides. As you go through the therapy, these things start to come out. This never happened for me when I was doing therapy with him, and he was getting very frustrated because things weren't going as planned, because I have the Holy Spirit and I could not be a good therapy client because I wasn't letting him do these things. I would go in every week and try to just talk, and he didn't like that. He didn't want to talk. He wanted to go into these trances, and what I started noticing is he was getting angry at me, and he would just be like, I just don't understand you, and I just don't get you. And then he had to run out of the session and smoke after it, and it's like smoke a cigarette, speed walk around the block. And one day he was just like, thank you for hanging in there with me. I just don't understand you. And I would just be like, hey man, I'm going to explain. He's like, what is it about me? Why can't you do it right? Like, why can't you? And I was like, honestly, it's because some of this stuff does feel demonic. I don't know. Like I said, can you explain that to me? And he said, well, surely a lot of this is from shamanism, and surely the shamans were tapping into something. I said, okay. Like shamanism, like paganism, like dark magics and stuff, like inner healing, new age meditation. This is what he's talking about, like spirit guides. I was in the new age at 16 years old, but I started putting the pieces together. And the first week I saw this guy, I woke up screaming in terror, like with entities on top of me, like a big bull with a robe on, and it was standing over my bed, and I was screaming like 10 times in a row. My husband woke up and he was so scared. He thought somebody broke into the house. So I also read up online some training programs for this kind of therapy, and they teach therapists to get in tune with their new age spirituality and to pray to spirits before and after sessions. I realized that I was feeling this demonic kind of feeling, and realizing he was praying and doing rituals before the sessions because he was trying so hard to get me into it, and I wasn't doing it. It was still infecting me though, and I was just like, wait, this is not okay. And I started to ask him questions about his theology, and I was almost trying to evangelize, and I was just like, if you don't believe in bad parts, what about pedophilia? What about like racism? What utility is there in racism and pedophilia? Like, and he's just like, well, you have to be able to empathize with it and understand that they've been through bad things, and they're not bad. And I'm just like, dude, when does this is crazy. This is like foolery. I realized that I need to be somewhere that aligns with my values. The worldview matters. You can't really separate worldview from therapy, so that's why it's important who you choose as a therapist. I will say the craziest thing that happened is one time I was on Zoom with him. So it started, like, just give you a quick timeline. It started with me meeting him upstairs in a closed down bank. It would just be me and him sometimes, like at night, like at 6:30 to 7:30 at night. One time we had to walk over like boxes and furniture strode everywhere. And then it got to a point where he had to go move to a different office, but in between there were like 25 sessions online. And when we were online, he started to one time I didn't know what was going on, to be honest, but he was sitting up and he's trying to talk to me, and he started, like, I don't know what was going on, but his eyes started rolling in the back of his head, and he was like, I thought he was falling asleep, and they were like fluttering, and you could only see the whites of his eyes, and I'm like, is he okay? But I just pretended it wasn't happening, and I kept talking to him, and I was getting really weirded out. I didn't understand it, and I was kind of scared. And then whenever we went back, he pretended like nothing happened, and I honestly pretended like nothing happened as well. And then, like, I think 2 sessions later, he was like, thank you for sticking by my side. Like, I just don't understand you. Like, I just don't get you. But thank you, because I'm having a real hard time with you. And he was like, to be honest, when I'm with you, I do disassociate in our sessions. He said, I don't know what it is, but I just disassociate. And I was like, okay, when your own therapist needs therapy because of you, whoa. No, I'm just kidding, but that is how it felt. I was like, what is going on? I must be like really complicated, because he started noticing that I would have a huge issue in one session, come back the next session, be okay because of my faith, because the Lord was carrying me through things, and I would explain that my faith was helping me. He just was like, it just sounds like your self-energy. How are you getting such good self-energy? I'm like, no, that's the Holy Spirit. And I was like, what the heck is this self-energy? Because this therapy believes that everybody has a self with a capital S within them, and they just have to be able to uncover that self. Like, I even read this statement from the guy who made the therapy himself that said he would be open to the belief that we all have gods within. And I want to let you know very clearly up front, they do not tell you this stuff in the therapy. It's almost like there's a God within, you find the God within. The God within has all the answers. So without even knowing, you're lending your soul to somebody who is operating in this really spiritual way, and you have to be very, very, very careful here. After I've been gone, things started making sense. If you're not going to be able to understand me or my faith, it's going to be really, really hard to understand me. I remember he would say that he just couldn't empathize with me. He couldn't have empathy for me in what I'd been through. And he said as hard as he tried, he would try, but like usually people who have been through things like me, he thinks, oh my, that person's had a horrible life, but with you, I don't feel You know, he started saying that. Like, he didn't understand how I had been okay through everything in life and how I'd gotten through all these things. Our last session, the devil spoke through him. This is the final breaking moment where I knew, okay, it's time to go. And I know you're probably thinking, how did it take you so long? But I think that shows you how self-doubt can keep you in some really messed up places. I was telling him about how I'm writing my second book right now, and this one is about how to heal from trauma. And I got the feedback that I need to be more of an authority when I speak. And that's a big thing because it is rooted in self-doubt as well. I told him about this and I was like, yeah, so I'm just working on being more of an authority. He starts cussing and screaming and yelling and saying, F them, F them, F them. And he just starts yelling like, F whoever tells me that I need to be more of an authority. He's like, you don't need to be an authority. And he just starts yelling and angry. I could feel the Holy Spirit saying that was not of him. That was definitely the enemy. When I left that day, he asked me if he did anything wrong that I might write in my journal about him. And I said, no, he's all good, man. I'm like, you're all good, man. When I left, I asked God for a sign that I should stop going, as if that wasn't a sign enough. It's so funny. Ye of little faith, you know. I was hanging out with a friend, and I was with her. I felt the Holy Spirit right before she left my house. Somehow she ended up staying at my house for like another hour. We get into the conversation about what's been really happening in therapy. She was like, Rima, you can't be there anymore. Like, it's time to go. I was like, but what if I need to evangelize to him? And she's like, you already have. You have. And I realized, because I thought back to our therapy, our course of therapy, there were a few times where, you know, the Holy Spirit would intervene and he would be like, you must have nature working in your life or the universe working in your life. And one of our last sessions, he said, well, it's clear you have a guiding light. It's, you know, people use any term except God. I sent an email a few days after that and just said, hey, I need a therapy that focuses on my spiritual health. He did tell me like he cannot integrate my faith and it made him uncomfortable. And it's just not something he can do. I just let him know I just need a therapy that can focus on my faith, that can focus on spiritual health. And he said, I completely understand. It was a pleasure to work with you. And we tied things up from there. I don't ever think that witchcraft was in God's plan. But he can use it and teach us. Because I don't think I was supposed to be in that. I love you guys so much. If you like today's video, if you like psychology, if you like Jesus, if you just like that kind of lifestyle, Christian lifestyle content, make sure you hit the sub button. I won't be going anywhere anytime soon, so make sure you follow along this journey. Love you guys so much. Bye.